The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I entered the conference room, the sterile environment filled with the scent of antiseptic and the faint hum of medical equipment. Today marked the beginning of a new project, one that I hoped would bring fresh energy to our surgical department. My new colleague, Dr. Alex Ramirez, had joined us just a few weeks prior. He was talented, driven, and brought a youthful perspective that invigorated our team discussions. We were tasked with developing a new protocol for postoperative care, an area ripe for improvement. As I spread out the materials on the table, I felt a familiar tension in the air. The hospital administration had been scrutinizing our resource allocation lately, tightening their grip on funding and personnel. Just last week, we received an email warning us about budget cuts that could affect our project. I glanced at Alex, who was flipping through his notes with focused intensity. His enthusiasm was contagious. It reminded me of why I became a surgeon in the first place. "Let's make this work," I said, trying to inject some optimism into our meeting. Alex nodded, his eyes bright with determination. "We can present something innovative that they can't ignore." However, as we began outlining our ideas, an unexpected announcement crackled over the intercom. A merger of departments was in the works due to financial constraints. My stomach twisted at the implications. This could jeopardize everything we were working towards. Mergers meant reassignments and potential layoffs. Uncertainty loomed like a storm cloud over our heads. "Did you hear that?" Alex asked, his brow furrowing slightly. I nodded slowly, my heart racing. Yes. It could change everything. Before we could discuss this further, a figure appeared in the doorway, Margaret Ellis, head of administration and an old friend from my residency days. Her presence sent ripples of anxiety through me. She had always been pragmatic but fair. Now she wore an expression that hinted at difficult decisions ahead. "Emily," she said with a nod before turning her attention to Alex. "Dr. Ramirez." I noticed how her gaze lingered on me for just a moment longer than necessary before she continued speaking about upcoming changes in departmental structure due to budget cuts and resource allocation issues. "Your project is important," she said firmly but without warmth. "But you both need to be prepared for adjustments." After Margaret left, I felt an uneasy silence settle between Alex and me. The merger announcement hung heavily in the air like an unwanted guest at a celebration. "What does this mean for us?" Alex finally asked. "I don't know," I admitted quietly. "But we need to stay focused on our project." As we resumed our discussion about postoperative care protocols, my mind raced with possibilities. The merger could disrupt not only our work but also my position within the hospital hierarchy. How would I explain this to my family? Would they understand why my professional life seemed so precarious? The clock ticked away as we worked diligently through lunch hours and coffee breaks while whispers circulated among staff about potential layoffs and reassignments stemming from the merger announcement. Each day brought more uncertainty regarding our futures and whether we'd still have jobs after this transition. Despite these challenges, there was something undeniably comforting about collaborating closely with Alex on this project, a connection formed through shared goals and late nights spent poring over data together in quiet corners of the hospital. Yet even as camaraderie blossomed between us amid chaos outside those walls, another thought crept into my mind: how long could we keep this partnership under wraps? Rumors were already swirling amongst colleagues about who might be reassigned or let go. And what if they discovered our growing bond? Just then, Margaret returned unexpectedly to deliver more news regarding departmental restructuring, this time accompanied by 2 board members who were there to oversee progress on all ongoing projects related to patient care initiatives. "Emily," she called out sharply as if sensing my unease despite her usual cordiality toward me during casual encounters outside work settings. I steeled myself for whatever came next. My heart raced but remained resolute against any potential fallout looming ahead. After all, our project was still paramount above personal concerns. even if it meant sacrificing certain aspects of my life outside these walls for now. As Margaret outlined expectations moving forward amidst lingering uncertainties surrounding department mergers affecting personnel decisions soon approaching fast upon us, I couldn't shake off feelings gnawing within me about what lay ahead, not just professionally, but personally too. The stakes had risen significantly since morning, and now it felt like everything hinged upon whether our project would succeed or falter under scrutiny from higher-ups eager for results amidst chaos unfolding around us. The lights flickered overhead, and a momentary silence enveloped the room. My colleague, Daniel, looked up from his notes, concern etched on his face. "Do you think we'll get it done in time?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, trying to project confidence despite the uncertainty. "We just need to focus. Let's brainstorm these ideas." As I gathered my thoughts, the power suddenly went out, plunging us into darkness. The emergency lights flickered on, casting an eerie glow around the conference room. "Great," I muttered under my breath. "Just what we need." Daniel chuckled softly beside me. "At least we have each other's company." I could hear the smile in his voice even in the dim light. We moved closer together at the table, our papers illuminated by the faint glow of our phones as we resumed discussing our project. The atmosphere shifted as we leaned in to share ideas more intimately. I could feel the warmth radiating between us. It was comforting yet electric. As we worked through our plans for the upcoming presentation, I caught his gaze lingering on me a moment too long. The tension was palpable. "Emily," he said softly, breaking our focus for a heartbeat. "I really appreciate your insights." Before I could respond, something shifted in the air between us. In that darkened room filled with uncertainty and ambition, we kissed, just a brief touch of lips that sent shockwaves through my system. Suddenly, a loud noise interrupted us. A sharp knock on the door echoed through the silence of the hallway outside. Panic surged within me as I pulled away from him abruptly. "Who is it?" Daniel called out nervously. "It's just me," came a familiar voice from behind the door, one that sent chills down my spine. It was Rebecca from administration. My heart raced as I exchanged a glance with Daniel. Our moment had been shattered by reality crashing back in. "We can't let her see us like this," I whispered urgently. Daniel nodded and quickly gathered his papers while I attempted to compose myself before opening the door. Rebecca stepped inside with her usual authoritative demeanor, her sharp eyes scanning the room before settling on us both. "I wanted to check on your progress," she said coolly. "Just finalizing some ideas for the merger project," I replied evenly, hoping to mask any trace of what had just transpired. Rebecca raised an eyebrow but seemed satisfied enough with my answer. "Good to hear. The board expects updates soon." She turned to leave but paused at the doorframe, glancing back at us one last time with an inscrutable expression before exiting. As soon as she was gone, Daniel let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "That was close," he murmured. "Too close," I agreed, feeling both exhilarated and terrified by what had just happened between us. We resumed our work, but now there was an unspoken tension hanging in the air, an awareness of our connection deepening amidst professional chaos and uncertainty about what lay ahead for both of us at this hospital. Hours passed as we pored over details and refined our proposal amidst sporadic interruptions from hospital staff bustling around outside, each sound pulling me back into reality where consequences loomed large over any personal desires or connections formed between colleagues in this high-stakes environment. Finally exhausted yet energized by our collaboration and unexpected kiss earlier that evening, we decided to call it a night after making significant progress on our project proposal. As we packed up our things and prepared to leave for home, Daniel caught my eye again, the spark still evident despite everything swirling around us professionally and personally alike. "I'll see you tomorrow," he asked hesitantly before stepping towards me once more, his expression earnest yet cautious, underlining how precarious this situation truly felt now more than ever before. "Yes," I replied firmly, though my heart raced at what tomorrow might bring, not only regarding work but also regarding us. With one last lingering look exchanged between us before parting ways for the night, I couldn't shake off feelings gnawing within me about what lay ahead, not just professionally, but personally too. I stood in front of the conference room, the proposal clutched tightly in my hands. My heart pounded as I recalled the late-night brainstorming session with my colleague, where we kissed. The memory felt both exhilarating and dangerous. I took a deep breath and pushed open the door, ready to present our ideas to the administration. As I began outlining our project, a rival surgeon interrupted me. Dr. Martinez, known for his sharp tongue and competitive nature, challenged our approach publicly. "You really think this is feasible?" he scoffed, his voice echoing off the sterile walls. I could feel my cheeks flush with anger and embarrassment. "It's innovative," I shot back, trying to maintain my composure. "We've done extensive research." But he wasn't finished. "Isn't it true that you have a personal connection with your partner on this project?" His words hung in the air like a heavy fog, and I felt a wave of tension ripple through the room. The administration exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. I glanced at my colleague beside me, who seemed equally taken aback by Dr. Martinez's insinuation. The implication was clear: our professional integrity was now under scrutiny because of rumors surrounding us. In that moment of uncertainty, something shifted within me. "Yes," I declared boldly, surprising even myself. "We do have a connection, one built on collaboration and mutual respect." My voice rang out with unexpected passion as I defended not just our project but also our partnership. Dr. Martinez looked momentarily stunned by my response, while some members of the administration appeared intrigued rather than disapproving. Yet, I could sense that their interest came with caution, their eyes narrowed as they weighed the implications of my words. After the meeting concluded, we stepped outside into the bustling staff lounge filled with chatter about surgeries and weekend plans. The atmosphere felt charged as whispers about our presentation circulated among colleagues like wildfire. "Did you hear what she said about her connection?" one nurse whispered to another nearby. I turned to my colleague, seeking reassurance in his expression after defending us so fiercely moments before. "I didn't expect you to speak up like that," he said softly but earnestly. His admiration mixed with concern made me acutely aware of how precarious our situation had become. "I had to," I replied quietly as we made our way toward the rooftop garden for some fresh air away from prying eyes and ears. The city skyline stretched out before us, a stark contrast to the chaos brewing within hospital walls. We stood there for a moment in silence before he spoke again. "What if they decide to investigate us further? This could jeopardize everything." His worry mirrored my own fears about how deeply intertwined our professional lives had become with personal feelings. I nodded slowly. Uncertainty loomed over us like dark clouds threatening rain at any moment. Just then, a familiar face approached, the head of administration from my past whom I hadn't seen in years. "Emily," she greeted warmly but with an underlying tension in her voice that hinted at complications ahead. "We need to discuss today's meeting." My stomach churned at her words. It felt like an impending storm was about to break loose. "Yes," I replied cautiously as we followed her back inside towards her office, a stark contrast from the vibrant rooftop garden where we shared fleeting moments of clarity away from chaos. As we entered her office filled with imposing decor that screamed authority, she wasted no time addressing what had transpired earlier that day. "Your defense was admirable," she began thoughtfully but continued cautiously, "but it raises questions about professionalism." I braced myself for what was coming next, an ultimatum perhaps. The stakes were rising higher than ever before as whispers echoed through every corridor of this hospital, rumors threatening not just our careers but also everything else we'd built together amidst secrecy and ambition. "Understand this," Any further issues will lead us to reconsider your positions here, she warned sternly before dismissing us with a wave of her hand, leaving an uneasy silence hanging between us once more. Stepping back into reality felt harsh after being momentarily shielded by hope on that rooftop garden earlier. Now it seemed like shadows loomed larger than ever around every corner we turned together. The tension in the air was palpable as we returned to our project room. I could feel the weight of the administration's warning pressing down on us. My colleague, Daniel, glanced at me with concern etched on his face. "We need to stay focused," he said quietly, breaking the silence. I nodded, but my mind raced with thoughts of what could happen next. As we began reviewing our proposal, whispers from nearby staff members echoed through the sterile walls. It felt like every eye was on us, scrutinizing our every move. "Did you hear about the merger?" one nurse whispered to another, casting a glance in our direction. The rumors were spreading like wildfire, and I couldn't shake the feeling that they were inching closer to us. Just then, a slip of paper landed on my desk. It was an anonymous note. "The administration is planning to tighten their grip on your project." My heart raced. This was not just idle gossip, someone was watching us closely. I showed it to Daniel, who frowned as he read it. "We need to be careful," he said, his voice low and serious. The atmosphere shifted as we continued working. The tension between us had grown palpable, spurred by both the pressure of our project and the looming threat from above. In a moment of vulnerability, I leaned closer to him as we discussed our next steps. Our eyes locked for a heartbeat longer than necessary, and without thinking, we kissed again, brief yet electric. Suddenly aware of what we had done, we pulled away quickly. The reality of our situation crashed over me like a wave. This was not just about professional collaboration anymore. "We can't let this distract us," Daniel said firmly, but I could see the conflict in his eyes. As we resumed working in silence, I noticed a group of colleagues gathering near the staff lounge. Their hushed tones carried over to us as they exchanged knowing glances and stifled laughter. "Did you hear? They're getting too close for comfort," one remarked loudly enough for us to catch it. "Let them talk," I replied defiantly, though inside I felt a mix of anger and anxiety rising within me. The rumors were beginning to spiral out of control, and it wouldn't be long before they reached the administration's ears again. With each passing hour that day, it became increasingly clear that our secret partnership was under siege, not just from administration scrutiny but from our peers as well. We spent night together finalizing details for our presentation while dodging questions from colleagues who seemed all too eager to pry into our lives. By morning, an unsettling realization settled in: we were walking a tightrope without a safety net beneath us. As I prepared for work that day, my thoughts were consumed by what lay ahead, both professionally and personally. Arriving at the hospital felt different now. It was no longer just a workplace but rather a battleground for my career and emotions intertwined with Daniel's presence in my life. As I stepped into the conference room again for another round of discussions with administration members looming over us like hawks ready to swoop down at any sign of weakness. "Are you ready?" Daniel asked quietly as he approached me before entering the meeting room. I took a deep breath and nodded resolutely despite my racing heart. There was no turning back now. We had come too far together, both in terms of our project and whatever this connection between us had become amidst all this chaos. But just before stepping inside those imposing double doors that separated us from potential judgment or validation, a thought struck me: what if this would be my last chance? What if everything crumbled around me before I could even grasp what had taken root within my heart? As we walked into that room filled with watchful eyes waiting expectantly for our presentation, an unexpected twist awaited us just around the corner. The meeting room felt colder than usual as we settled in, the weight of unspoken tension hanging in the air. I glanced at my colleague, Daniel, who was reviewing our presentation slides one last time. We had worked tirelessly to finalize the project details, but the looming hospital event threatened to overshadow our efforts. "Do you think they'll actually consider our proposal?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, though doubt crept into my mind. The administration's recent decisions had been unpredictable at best. Just then, I noticed a group of senior staff members entering the room, their expressions unreadable. As we began our presentation, I felt a surge of adrenaline. The passion we shared for this project was palpable. "We believe this initiative will improve patient outcomes significantly," I stated confidently. Daniel chimed in with supporting data that highlighted our findings. However, I could sense the scrutiny from the administration growing sharper with every word we spoke. Midway through our presentation, an unexpected scheduling conflict arose. A hospital gala was set for the same night as our planned review session with the administration. "This isn't good," Daniel muttered under his breath as he scanned through the calendar on his phone. "We might have to work late again." "Let's just focus on what we can control," I replied, trying to maintain my composure despite the mounting pressure. Later that evening at a nearby cafe, we found ourselves discussing how much we enjoyed working together outside of surgical hours, something neither of us had anticipated. "I never knew you were into hiking," I remarked after he shared tales of weekend adventures in local parks. "It's my escape from all this," he replied with a soft smile that made my heart race unexpectedly. As we returned to the hospital for an impromptu work session, whispers echoed in the staff lounge about our late nights together becoming more than mere collaboration. "Have you heard? Emily and Daniel are practically inseparable these days," one nurse remarked to another as they passed by us. The gossip stung more than I expected. It threatened everything we had built so far. "We should keep things professional," I suggested cautiously as we entered a quiet conference room to finalize details for our upcoming presentation. Just then, an administrative assistant burst in with urgent news about changes to hospital policies regarding project approvals. "You both need to be aware that any personal relationships involving team members will be scrutinized closely," she warned before exiting as quickly as she came. Daniel looked at me with concern etched across his face. "This could jeopardize everything we've worked for." "I know," I replied firmly, feeling a mix of fear and determination rising within me. Our late-night sessions became more fraught with anxiety after that warning. We worked diligently but remained acutely aware of every sideways glance from colleagues and superiors alike. Then came another twist. During one such late-night meeting in the conference room, while poring over charts and proposals together, Daniel leaned closer and whispered something that caught me off guard. "If things go south, promise me you'll look out for yourself first." I nodded solemnly but felt an unsettling chill run down my spine at his words. As if on cue, an unexpected visitor interrupted us. Dr. Martinez, head of surgery and known for her no-nonsense demeanor, walked in without knocking. She raised an eyebrow at our scattered papers and empty coffee cups but said nothing about them directly. "We're just finalizing some details before tomorrow's meeting," I explained quickly. "Make sure it's all ready by morning," she replied curtly before stepping out again. Daniel sighed heavily once she left the room. "That was close." "I don't think she suspects anything yet," I said quietly but couldn't shake off the feeling that scrutiny was tightening around us like a noose. As we prepared to leave for home later that night, murmurs filled the air again, this time louder and more pointed than before. "Did you see them? Always working late together." The words echoed ominously in my mind as we stepped into the elevator side by side. It was clear that whatever connection we had built was now under serious threat from outside forces beyond our control. With each passing day leading up to our presentation date, uncertainty loomed larger than ever before, a storm brewing on the horizon threatening to engulf everything we had fought for together. Just as I thought we might find some semblance of peace amid all this chaos, an ultimatum came crashing down from administration regarding our positions if rumors continued to circulate unchecked about us working too closely together. I turned to Daniel with dread pooling in my stomach. This could shatter everything, our careers or whatever fragile bond had formed between us during these tumultuous weeks ahead. I felt the weight of the ultimatum hanging over us like a storm cloud. The room was silent, save for the faint hum of fluorescent lights above us. Daniel's expression mirrored my own, concern mixed with determination. "We need to focus on the presentation," he said, breaking the silence. His voice was steady, but I could hear the underlying tension. We spent hours perfecting our slides, each detail scrutinized and re-scrutinized. The pressure was palpable, and I could feel my heart racing as we approached the final touches. Just as we thought we had everything in place, a message from administration came through, a last-minute change in requirements for our presentation. It felt like a punch to the gut. "We can adapt," Daniel said, though I could see his frustration simmering just below the surface. "We have to." I nodded, trying to push aside my own anxiety. But in that moment, it seemed as if everything we had worked for was slipping away. As night fell, we found ourselves still at the hospital, surrounded by stacks of papers and half-empty coffee cups. The sterile walls of our conference room felt more like a prison than a workspace. "Let's take a break," I suggested, needing to clear my head. We stepped out onto the rooftop garden, an unlikely sanctuary amid our chaotic lives. The cool night air wrapped around us like a blanket as we stood side by side, looking out over the city skyline. "This is what we need," I said softly, feeling a rare moment of calm wash over me. Daniel turned to me with an intensity that made my heart race again. "I know this is challenging, but I believe in us." Before I could respond, an unexpected visitor interrupted our moment, a fellow surgeon who had been working late as well. "What are you two doing up here?" he asked with a teasing tone that belied his curiosity. My cheeks flushed as I exchanged glances with Daniel. His expression shifted from surprise to annoyance. "We were just taking a break," Daniel replied curtly. The tension in his voice was unmistakable as he stepped closer to me protectively. Our colleague raised an eyebrow but didn't press further. Instead, he lingered just long enough to plant seeds of doubt in my mind. As he walked away, I sensed that rumors would only grow stronger from this encounter. "We need to be more careful," I whispered to Daniel after our colleague disappeared from view. He nodded but looked frustrated. Something had shifted between us during that brief interruption. The rest of the night passed in a blur of frantic typing and whispered discussions about how best to present our project while navigating the growing scrutiny from administration and staff alike. As dawn approached, exhaustion settled over me like a heavy fog, yet there was still one more hurdle ahead, the presentation itself. In those final moments before we stepped into the conference room filled with administrators and colleagues alike, my stomach churned with apprehension about what lay ahead, not just for our project but for us personally too. The meeting commenced with formalities that felt painfully drawn out. Each word seemed to echo ominously against my thoughts about our precarious situation. Just when it seemed we might finally get through unscathed, one of the board members leaned forward and fixed me with an intense gaze. "I've heard some interesting things about you too," she said pointedly before turning her attention back to Daniel. My breath caught in my throat as murmurs rippled through those gathered around us, a reminder that nothing remained private anymore. As we began presenting our project details amidst rising tensions within the room, I couldn't shake off her words or their implications regarding us both professionally and personally. Every glance exchanged between Daniel and myself now felt laden with unspoken worries about how far this would reach. When it finally ended, successfully or not, I left feeling more uncertain than ever about what awaited me next. Would administration act on their suspicions? Would they bring everything crashing down around us? With those thoughts swirling in my head like storm clouds gathering once again overhead, I realized how fragile everything truly was. The presentation had been a whirlwind of emotions, and as I stepped out of the conference room, I could still feel the adrenaline coursing through me. My colleague, Daniel, followed closely behind, his expression a mix of relief and apprehension. We had managed to present our project despite the technical failure that nearly derailed everything. "Did you see their faces when we improvised?" he asked, a hint of excitement in his voice. I nodded. It was risky, but it worked. For now. As we walked down the sterile hallway, whispers echoed around us. Colleagues were huddled in small groups, their eyes darting in our direction. It was clear that rumors were already spreading about our partnership, and not just our professional collaboration. Suddenly, the head of administration appeared at the end of the corridor. I felt my heart sink as he approached us with an intense gaze. "Emily," he began, his tone serious, "we need to discuss what just happened in there." My stomach twisted into knots. "Of course," I replied cautiously. "You both did well today," he continued but then paused, letting his words linger ominously. "However, I can't ignore the implications of your close working relationship." Daniel shifted beside me, tension radiating from him. "We're focused on our project," he interjected defensively. The administrator raised an eyebrow. "That's commendable, but I've received reports suggesting there's more than just work between you two." His words hung heavy in the air. I felt my pulse quicken as I exchanged a glance with Daniel. The stakes were rising faster than I anticipated. "That's absurd," I said firmly. "Our focus is solely on this project." He nodded slowly but didn't seem convinced. "Just be aware that further scrutiny may be necessary if this continues." With that warning hanging over us like a dark cloud, he turned and walked away. Afterward, Daniel and I found ourselves at a small cafe nearby, a welcome escape from the hospital's harsh realities. The warm aroma of coffee wrapped around us like a comforting blanket as we sat at a corner table. "I didn't expect that," Daniel said quietly, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly. "Neither did I admitted. But we need to stay focused on our project." He looked up suddenly, determination flashing in his eyes. "We can prove them wrong. Let's make this project undeniable." As we discussed strategies for our next steps, an unexpected ally arrived, Dr. Martinez, a respected senior surgeon known for her no-nonsense attitude. "I overheard some chatter about you two," she said bluntly as she joined us at the table. I braced myself for criticism but instead found support in her voice. "You handled yourself well today despite the chaos." "Thank you," Daniel replied appreciatively. "But be cautious," she added with a knowing look. "The administration is watching closely." Her warning resonated deeply within me. We were walking a tightrope without any safety net beneath us. Later that evening, while reviewing project details back at home, my phone buzzed with an alert from hospital communications, meeting scheduled regarding recent administrative concerns. My heart sank again. It felt like another storm was brewing on the horizon. With each passing hour leading up to that meeting, anxiety grew heavier on my shoulders. The thought of facing administration again felt daunting, especially with their growing suspicions about my relationship with Daniel looming over us like an ever-present threat. The following day arrived too quickly. Tension filled the air as we gathered for the meeting in the imposing administrative office, a stark contrast to our collaborative spirit during presentations. As we sat across from several members of administration, they wasted no time addressing their concerns directly. "We appreciate your hard work," one began cautiously before pivoting sharply to accusations about our partnership's nature and its impact on professionalism within the hospital environment. "We're committed to transparency and integrity," Daniel replied earnestly while meeting their gaze head-on. But just as they seemed ready to accept our explanations tentatively, a sudden interruption occurred. An unexpected member of administration entered unannounced and took a seat beside us, someone who had always championed innovation in our department. "Excuse me," she interjected firmly before anyone could respond further to previous accusations. "I believe it's important to recognize how valuable their collaboration has been." Her support surprised everyone in attendance, including me, and sparked murmurs throughout the room as tensions shifted slightly in our favor momentarily. But even amidst this newfound support from an unexpected ally, my instincts warned me against complacency. Whispers still echoed throughout every corner of the hospital regarding what they believed lay beneath the surface between Daniel and me. As we left that meeting room filled with mixed emotions, relief mingled with uncertainty, I couldn't shake off one final comment made by another administrator: "We'll be keeping a close eye on your professional conduct moving forward." A chill ran down my spine at those words. It was evident that scrutiny would only intensify from here on out, and soon enough we'd have to confront not only administrative pressures but also deeper feelings threatening everything we'd built together thus far. The celebration that followed our successful presentation felt bittersweet. Colleagues gathered in the staff lounge, laughter echoing through the air, but I could sense an undercurrent of tension. Whispers about our project and the nature of my relationship with my colleague were palpable. I tried to engage in light conversation, but my thoughts kept drifting back to what lay ahead. "Emily, you did great today," a fellow surgeon remarked, clapping me on the shoulder. "But have you noticed how some people are looking at you?" I nodded, my stomach tightening. The jealousy among peers was becoming more pronounced. It was as if they were waiting for a misstep, eager to pounce on any sign of weakness or favoritism. I glanced across the room and caught sight of my colleague, smiling as he mingled with others. The warmth between us felt like a fragile secret amidst the scrutiny. Suddenly, an old friend from medical school walked through the door, Laura. Her presence was unexpected and disconcerting. "Emily, I heard about your project. Congratulations," she exclaimed, but her tone shifted as her eyes narrowed slightly. "Though I must admit, I've heard some interesting things about you lately." I forced a smile while internally bracing myself for her probing questions. "You know how it is in this field, people talk." Laura leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Are you sure this is the right path? You've always been so dedicated to your career." Her concern felt like a judgment wrapped in friendship. Before I could respond, another colleague approached us with news that sent a jolt through me. "Did you hear? They might transfer Jake to another hospital." My heart sank at the thought of losing him professionally and personally. "Is that true?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the rising panic within me. "I think it's just rumors for now," he replied dismissively before moving on to join another group. The uncertainty hung heavy in the air, and I felt torn between confronting my feelings for Jake and protecting myself from potential heartbreak. Should I reach out and discuss this looming transfer? Or would that only complicate things further? As Laura continued chatting about her recent projects, I found it hard to focus on her words. My mind raced with thoughts of what losing Jake would mean, not just for our work but for everything we had shared in recent weeks. Later that evening, after most colleagues had left, I found myself alone on the rooftop garden, a rare moment of tranquility amid chaos. The city sprawled below me as night fell, lights flickered like stars against the dark canvas of sky. Just then, Jake appeared beside me quietly. "Mind if I join you?" he asked softly. "Not at all," I replied as he took a seat next to me on one of the benches surrounded by potted plants. The silence between us was filled with unspoken words. The weight of our situation hung heavily in the air. "I overheard some talk today," he began cautiously. I turned to him sharply, his expression mirrored my own concern. "About your transfer?" He nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "It's not official yet, but it's something they're considering." An uncomfortable silence enveloped us again until he broke it with a question that made my heart race. "What are we doing here, Emily?" My chest tightened at his words. There was no easy answer to that question anymore. The line between professionalism and personal connection had blurred irreparably. "I don't know," I admitted finally. "But whatever happens next." Before I could finish my sentence, we heard footsteps approaching from behind. Someone was coming up to interrupt our moment once more. "We need to talk." It was Laura again. She had followed me up here without warning. Jake stood abruptly as if preparing for confrontation. Tension crackled between us as she continued speaking directly to me. "You need to be careful about how much attention this is drawing." Her words cut deep. They were laced with both concern and accusation wrapped in one package. As she spoke about professional boundaries and reputations at stake, a part of me wanted to defend myself, to defend us, but another part recognized how precarious our situation truly was. "Look," Jake interjected firmly, stepping closer to Laura with determination in his eyes. "Emily is doing her job well, better than anyone else here." I felt a rush of gratitude mixed with anxiety at his defense. Would it only escalate tensions further? Laura's expression softened slightly but remained skeptical. "We all need each other here," she said finally before turning away from us both with a sigh of resignation. As she left us alone once more on the rooftop garden under dimming stars overhead, uncertainty loomed larger than ever before. The stakes were higher than just our careers now. They involved our hearts too. Jake looked at me intently, then whispered softly, "We should figure this out before it gets worse." His words echoed in my mind as we stood there together beneath the vast sky. An impending decision loomed over us like dark clouds ready to unleash their storm without warning. Jake's gaze felt heavy as we stood in the rooftop garden, the city sprawling beneath us. I sensed the weight of our choices pressing down on both of us. The air was thick with unspoken words, and I could almost hear the whispers of our colleagues, speculating about our relationship. "We need to confront this," I said, breaking the silence. "The rumors are spreading like wildfire." Jake nodded, his expression serious. "I agree. But how do we approach administration without putting everything at risk?" Just then, a shadow crossed our path. It was Maria, one of our colleagues, her eyes darting between us with a mix of curiosity and concern. "Have you two heard about the investigation?" "They're looking into everything," she said, her voice low. I felt a chill run down my spine. This was worse than I had feared. "We're aware," I replied cautiously. "But we have to stay focused on our project." Maria hesitated, then leaned closer. "Just be careful. People are taking sides." As she walked away, I turned to Jake, anxiety bubbling within me. We decided to meet later that evening at a local cafe known for its strong coffee and quiet corners. The atmosphere was warm and inviting, a stark contrast to the tension that filled my mind. Over steaming mugs, we discussed our next steps meticulously. "We need to gather evidence about this leak," Jake proposed earnestly. "If there's information circulating about us, we can't let it undermine our work." I agreed but knew it would take more than just diligence. Trust among colleagues was eroding quickly. As we left the cafe, a familiar face caught my eye, David, an old friend from medical school who now worked in administration. "Emily. Good to see you," he called out with a wave. My heart raced. He had insight into what was happening behind closed doors at the hospital. "David. Can we talk for a moment?" I asked urgently as Jake stepped back slightly. David's expression shifted from friendly to cautious as he nodded and led me away from the bustling street. "I heard things are tense for you too," he said quietly. "The administration is not just concerned about your project, they're scrutinizing your relationship." My stomach dropped at his words. "We're handling it," I replied defensively, though uncertainty loomed large in my mind. David studied me closely before speaking again. "Just remember, loyalty can be fragile in this environment." Returning home that night felt heavier than usual. My husband was watching television in the living room when I entered quietly. He barely acknowledged my presence as I moved past him toward the kitchen. The disconnection between us had grown palpable over time. The next morning brought another layer of tension as news spread through the hospital like wildfire. an internal investigation had officially begun regarding Jake and me. Colleagues whispered behind closed doors and exchanged glances filled with judgment. I found myself walking through the staff lounge when Linda approached me with an accusatory tone. "You know they're saying you two are unprofessional?" Her words stung more than I'd anticipated. "Linda," I said firmly but calmly, "this is about our project." She shrugged dismissively but continued to stare as if waiting for more drama to unfold. Later that day during rounds, whispers followed us like shadows, each comment sharper than the last. The pressure mounted until it became unbearable. Jake and I needed clarity on where we stood professionally and personally amid this chaos. Finally confronting Jake in an empty conference room later that afternoon felt like stepping onto shaky ground. "We can't ignore this any longer," I stated firmly as he leaned against the wall with crossed arms. "I know," he replied quietly but resolutely. "But what if they decide to terminate one of us? Then we fight back together," I insisted without hesitation, even if uncertainty gnawed at me inside. As we strategized about how to address administration directly regarding these rumors and their implications on our careers, an unexpected knock interrupted us. Maria again stood there with urgency etched across her face. "They want you both in administration's office now," she warned before retreating down the hall quickly. My heart raced at her words. It felt like being summoned before a tribunal rather than a workplace meeting. We exchanged glances filled with dread but also determination as we headed toward that imposing office together. Inside awaited several members of administration seated around a long table, their expressions serious as they gestured for us to sit down across from them. "Emily and Jake," began Mr. Thompson coldly, "we're conducting an internal investigation regarding rumors that have surfaced." A knot tightened in my stomach as he continued outlining potential consequences while detailing how damaging personal relationships could be within a professional setting. An ultimatum loomed ominously over us both. Either end whatever existed between us or risk losing everything we had worked for together. As his words settled heavily in the air around us like smoke after a firestorm, I felt Jake's hand brush against mine under the table, a silent promise amidst chaos, but would it be enough? The tension in the room was palpable. I glanced at Jake, who wore a mask of determination, but I could see the flicker of doubt in his eyes. The ultimatum from administration hung over us like a dark cloud, threatening to rain down ruin on everything we had built together. I had never felt so trapped between my professional obligations and the emotional connection that had blossomed unexpectedly. "We need to find a way out of this," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "We can't let them dictate our lives." Jake nodded, his jaw clenched tight. He understood the stakes as well as I did. Our careers were on the line, but so was something far more fragile and precious. "Let's focus on the project," he suggested, his tone pragmatic. "If we deliver results, they might reconsider." The suggestion felt like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. We started brainstorming ways to enhance our proposal further, poring over data and refining our presentation for the upcoming meeting with administration. Just then, a colleague burst into the conference room unannounced. "Have you heard? There are whispers about someone sabotaging your project," she said breathlessly. My heart sank at the implication. Who would want to undermine our hard work? Jake exchanged glances with me, concern etched on his face. This was no longer just about us, it was about our professional integrity being attacked. As we delved deeper into this new threat, I felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through me. We needed to uncover who was behind this sabotage before it derailed everything we had worked for. "Let's keep this between us for now," I said firmly. "We can't let anyone else know." Jake agreed, and together we began piecing together clues from conversations overheard in the staff lounge. Days turned into sleepless nights as we gathered evidence discreetly while maintaining our usual routines at work. Each passing moment heightened my anxiety. Every suspicious glance from colleagues made me question who could be trusted. The walls felt like they were closing in around us as rumors spread like wildfire through the hospital corridors. One afternoon in the rooftop garden, away from prying eyes, Jake and I shared a moment of clarity amidst chaos. "I can't lose you," he admitted quietly, vulnerability creeping into his voice. My heart raced at his admission. It echoed my own fears and desires that had been building ever since we first collaborated on this project. "We can't let our feelings cloud our judgment," I replied softly, though every part of me longed to embrace him fully. Just then, a loud notification from my phone shattered the moment, an email from administration demanding an immediate meeting regarding our project's progress and allegations of misconduct associated with it. "Emily," Jake said urgently as he read over my shoulder, "this is serious." The ultimatum now felt more real than ever. We were running out of time to prove ourselves innocent while navigating this emotional minefield. In that meeting with administration, things took an unexpected turn when one board member spoke up in our defense, someone whose opinion carried weight in these discussions. "I believe their work merits recognition rather than scrutiny," he argued passionately against the tide of doubt surrounding us. But just as hope flickered back to life within me, another board member countered with accusations about personal relationships compromising professionalism, our secret connection laid bare before everyone present like a raw wound exposed to air. The confrontation spiraled quickly as tensions escalated around us. Colleagues whispered among themselves while I fought to maintain composure under scrutiny. It became clear that if we didn't act swiftly now, if we didn't sever whatever ties might be seen as inappropriate, we risked losing not only our careers but also each other in this tangled web of ambition and desire. As I left that meeting feeling defeated yet resolute about protecting what mattered most, my career and my bond with Jake, I received an anonymous note slipped under my office door later that evening: "You're being watched." My stomach dropped at its implications. Someone was intent on seeing us fail. In that moment of realization, the gravity of everything crashing down around me, I knew there would be no easy resolution ahead. The stakes had risen beyond mere career ambitions or personal feelings. Now it was survival against forces unseen but palpably threatening both my future and relationship with Jake. With uncertainty looming ever closer like shadows encroaching at dusk, I faced an impossible choice: fight for what we had built or retreat into safety alone. A decision loomed before me that would alter everything forever, the price yet unknown but surely steep for both of us caught in this storm together.